Jake Morrison stood in the airlock of the Calvoxian flagship, watching the metallic doors slide open. His black diplomatic uniform was pressed perfectly, and his expression remained calm. Behind him, Captain Amy Rodriguez and 3 other human delegates waited in silence. They had traveled 3 weeks through space to reach this neutral station, all for what should have been a simple trade negotiation. The Calvoxian ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than any human vessel. Its corridors gleamed with silver and gold decorations, and holographic displays floated in the air showing the history of their empire. Jake had studied their culture for months. He knew they were proud people with 3,000 years of civilization behind them. Humanity, by comparison, had only developed faster than light travel 15 years ago. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms approached them. His robes were deep purple, and his eyes held the weariness of age. He bowed slightly, and Jake returned the gesture with practiced precision. "Ambassador Morrison," the alien said in perfect English, "I am High Counselor Thexnil. Welcome aboard the Sovereign Light." "Thank you for receiving us, Counselor," Jake replied. His voice was steady and professional. They walked through the corridors, passing dozens of Calvoxian crew members who stopped to stare at the humans. Jake ignored the attention. He had dealt with far worse during his military years. The counselor led them to a grand ceremonial hall where hundreds of Calvoxians had gathered. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Princess Velara. She was young, probably no more than 19 in human years. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than the others, marking her royal bloodline. She wore a crown of crystalline material that sparkled under the lights. Her 3 eyes watched the humans approach with barely concealed amusement. Jake and his team stopped at the designated spot and bowed formally. The princess did not rise from her throne. Instead, she leaned back and gestured lazily with one of her 4 hands. "So these are the humans everyone has been talking about," she said. Her voice carried across the hall, and several Calvoxians chuckled. "They look exactly as I imagined. Small, simple, barely evolved enough to leave their cradle world." Jake's expression did not change. Amy tensed beside him, but she remained silent. Years of diplomatic training kept them all perfectly still. The princess continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "Tell me, Ambassador Morrison, do you even understand proper galactic protocols? Or did your people simply stumble through the cosmos like children and hope someone would teach you manners?" The hall erupted in laughter. Several young Calvoxians pointed at the humans, whispering among themselves. High Counselor Thexnil closed his eyes briefly, his face showing deep concern. Jake stood there, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked directly at the princess. His face showed nothing, no anger, no embarrassment, no reaction at all. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Then Jake turned around. He walked toward the exit with measured steps. His boots clicked against the polished floor in perfect rhythm. Amy and the other delegates immediately followed him. Not one of them looked back. Not one of them said a word. Princess Velara sat up straighter, confusion crossing her face. "Where are you going? I have not dismissed you." Jake did not stop. He did not turn around. He simply walked out of the hall as if the princess had never spoken. The laughter in the hall died instantly. Calvoxians looked at each other, uncertain what had just happened. The princess stood from her throne, her 3 eyes wide with surprise. "Did he just walk away from me?" she asked, her voice rising. "Did that primitive human just turn his back on royalty?" High Counselor Thexnil stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Princess, perhaps we should—" "This is perfect," the princess interrupted, laughing again. "He is even more primitive than I thought. He cannot even handle a simple conversation. Let him leave. We do not need humans anyway." But the counselor did not laugh. He watched the empty doorway where the humans had departed, and his expression grew darker. He had lived for 200 years, and had advised 3 emperors. He recognized something the young princess did not. Silence could be more powerful than any words. Jake and his team returned to their ship without speaking to anyone. The docking crew tried to ask questions, but Amy waved them away. Within 20 minutes, their vessel had detached from the Calvoxian flagship and turned toward home. Inside the ship, Amy finally spoke. "Sir, should we file a formal complaint with the Galactic Council?" Jake shook his head. "No." "Should we issue a statement?" "No." Amy frowned. "Then what do we do?" Jake sat in the captain's chair and looked out at the stars. "We do nothing. We say nothing. And we wait." "Wait for what?" "For them to understand what they have lost." Back on the Calvoxian flagship, Princess Velara celebrated what she believed was a victory. She told the story to her friends, laughing about how the human had run away like a scared animal. But High Counselor Thex Neal did not celebrate. He returned to his chambers and immediately began sending messages to the Calvoxian intelligence network. He needed to know everything about humanity. He needed to know what they had done before entering galactic politics. He needed to know why other species spoke about them with respect instead of mockery. By the time he received the reports 3 days later, his fears were confirmed. The young princess had made a terrible mistake, and the Empire would soon pay the price for her arrogance. The human ambassador had not run away in fear. He had simply decided that the Calvoxian Empire was not worth his time. 3 days after Jake Morrison left the Calvoxian flagship, something strange began happening across the galaxy. It started small, almost unnoticeable. A human trade minister named Lisa Chen was scheduled to sign a major contract with a Calvoxian mining colony. The contract involved rare metals worth billions of credits. Lisa arrived at the meeting, reviewed the documents, and then politely excused herself. "I apologize," she said with a professional smile. "Something has come up. We will need to postpone this agreement." The Calvoxian representatives were confused but not worried. They assumed she would return the next week. She never did. 2 days later, Ben Parker, the chief of the Human Exploratory Fleet, sent new orders to 15 research vessels. They had been mapping star systems near Calvoxian space, working on joint scientific projects. The orders were simple: redirect all missions to different sectors. No explanation was given. The Calvoxian Science Academy sent inquiries asking why the humans had suddenly changed their plans. Ben sent back a polite message saying that humanity had decided to focus on other priorities. Nothing more. By the end of the first week, the pattern became clear. Every human diplomat, scientist, trader, and military officer who had dealings with the Calvoxian Empire was quietly withdrawing. They did not file complaints. They did not make angry speeches. They simply stopped cooperating. Dr. Karen Phillips had been working on the Calvoxian outer colonies for 6 months. She was a medical researcher helping fight a plague that had killed thousands. Her work was saving lives every day. One morning, she packed her equipment, thanked the local governor for his hospitality, and left on the next transport ship. The governor begged her to stay. The plague was not yet defeated. People were still dying. But Karen just smiled sadly and said her time there was finished. "But why?" the governor asked desperately. "What did we do wrong?" Karen did not answer. She simply left. The same thing happened with human agricultural specialists who had been solving food shortages, with human engineers who had been upgrading Calvoxian infrastructure, with human translators who had been helping the Calvoxians communicate with newly discovered species. One by one, they all departed. Princess Velara heard about these incidents but dismissed them. She sat in her chambers with her friends, young Calvoxian nobles who agreed with everything she said. The humans are being childish, she declared. They cannot handle criticism, so they run away. This proves they are as primitive as I said. But High Counselor Thexneal knew better. He stood before the princess with reports from across the empire. Your Highness, this is not childish behavior. This is a coordinated response. The humans are not running away. They are sending a message. What message? The princess laughed. That they are weak? That they do not need us, Thexneal said quietly, and that we may need them far more than we realized. The princess waved her hand dismissively. We are the Calvoxian Empire. We have existed for 3,000 years. We do not need humans who have barely learned to travel between stars. Thexneal said nothing more. There was no point in arguing with youth and arrogance. By the third week, other galactic civilizations began to notice. News networks across hundreds of worlds discussed the mysterious human withdrawal from Calvoxian space. Some species found it amusing, others found it concerning. The Vrex Collective, a powerful group of trading worlds, watched with particular interest. Their ambassador, a crystalline being named Shixtar, contacted Jake Morrison directly. Ambassador, we have seen what happened with the Calvoxians, Shixtar said. We want you to know that the Vrex Collective values humanity and wishes to strengthen our partnership. Jake met with Shixtar the next day. Within a week, they had signed 3 new trade agreements and a mutual defense pact. Other species followed. The Teln Federation increased their cultural exchange programs with Earth. The Morvian Alliance invited human observers to their military academies. Small civilizations that had never considered humans important suddenly wanted to build relationships with them. The message was clear. If humanity was willing to walk away from the mighty Calvoxian Empire without a second thought, then humanity must be more powerful than anyone had assumed. Meanwhile, in the Calvoxian military headquarters, Admiral Kexthon was discovering a troubling truth. For the past year, his tactical officers had been studying human combat techniques. Humanity had fought a brutal 3-year war against the Zarthok, a violent species that had terrorized that region of space. The humans had not just survived, they had won. Kexathan had planned to invite human military advisors to train Calvoxian forces in these new tactics. The Zarthok were becoming aggressive again, testing borders, probing defenses. The Admiral knew his empire was not prepared. He sent a formal request to Earth asking for military cooperation. The response came back 3 days later. It was polite. It was professional. It was also a clear rejection. Humanity appreciates the Calvoxian Empire's interest, but must decline at this time. We wish you success in your endeavors. Admiral Kexathan read the message 5 times. Then he went to see High Counselor Thexneal. She has doomed us, the Admiral said bluntly. The princess has destroyed our best chance of surviving what is coming. Thexneal nodded slowly. I know. Can we fix this? I do not know. But we must try. The counselor requested an audience with Princess Velara. He brought Admiral Kexathon with him. They entered her chambers and found her laughing with her friends about a new piece of jewelry. Your Highness, Thexneal began carefully, we need to discuss the situation with humanity. The princess groaned. Not this again. The humans are gone. Let them go. We do not need them. Admiral Kexthon stepped forward. Princess, with respect, you are wrong. The Zarthok are mobilizing on our borders. Without human tactical support, we may face significant losses. Then we will fight them ourselves, as we have always done, the princess said. The Calvoxian Empire does not need help from primitives. The humans defeated the Zarthok, the Admiral said flatly. We have never fought them successfully. The princess finally looked uncomfortable. What do you mean they defeated them? When? Before they entered galactic politics. The Zarthok invaded human space 12 years ago. It was brutal. Millions died, but humanity adapted, innovated, and ultimately drove them back. The Zarthok have not attacked human territory since. The room fell silent. The princess's friends stopped laughing. For the first time, doubt crossed her young face. "Why did no one tell me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you never asked," Thexanil replied. "You assumed humans were beneath you. You did not bother to learn the truth." The princess stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, humanity was moving forward without them, and the Calvoxian Empire was about to discover exactly how much that would cost. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison walked away from Princess Velara. The young royal had tried to forget about the incident, convincing herself that it meant nothing. But the galaxy would not let her forget. The problems started small. A Calvoxian trade convoy was delayed at a neutral space station. When the captain asked why, the station master said they were waiting for clearance from human safety inspectors. Since when did humans have authority over neutral stations? Since those humans had saved the station from a reactor meltdown 2 years ago, the captain was told. The station trusted their judgment. Then a diplomatic crisis erupted between the Calvoxians and a smaller species called the Wrenth. Normally, human translators would have helped negotiate. The Wrenth language was extremely difficult, and humans had developed the best translation programs. But when the Calvoxian ambassador requested assistance, Earth politely declined. The crisis remained unsolved. More concerning were the military reports. Zarthok ships were appearing near Calvoxian borders with increasing frequency. They were not attacking yet, just watching, testing, waiting for weakness. Admiral Kexthan sent urgent requests to the Calvoxian Empire's traditional allies. The responses were disappointingly weak. Yes, they would honor their defense treaties if war began. But no, they could not send additional forces right now. They had their own problems. Perhaps the Calvoxians should ask the humans for help. Princess Velara heard these reports but still did not understand. She sat in the war room with her military council looking at star maps. "Why does everyone keep mentioning the humans?" she demanded. "They are newcomers. What could they possibly offer us?" Admiral Kexthan looked tired. He had not slept well in weeks. "Your Highness, perhaps you should watch this." He activated a holographic display. It showed a recording from a galactic news network. A human man sat across from an alien interviewer. The caption identified him as Kevin Brooks, a human scientist and cultural ambassador. "Dr. Brooks," the interviewer asked, "there has been much discussion about humanity's withdrawal from Calvoxian space. Some say your people were insulted by Princess Velara's words. What is your response?" Kevin Brooks smiled. It was not an angry smile or a sad smile. It was calm and confident. "We do not need to justify our worth to anyone," he said simply. "Our actions speak for themselves. If the Calvoxian Empire wishes to believe we are primitive, that is their choice. We will continue working with those who value partnership and mutual respect." "But surely the princess's words were hurtful," the interviewer pressed. "Words are just words," Kevin replied. "What matters is behavior. We chose to spend our time and resources where they are appreciated. That is not weakness. That is wisdom." The interview ended. Admiral Kexthan turned off the display. Princess Velara sat very still. "That is what the galaxy is saying, Your Highness," the Admiral said quietly. "Humanity is not angry with us. They have simply decided we are not worth their time." Something cold settled in the princess's stomach. She dismissed the council and returned to her chambers. Once alone, she began searching through intelligence reports that she had previously ignored. What she found shook her. The Zarthok War had been even more brutal than Admiral Kexthan had described. The Zarthok were a warrior species who believed in conquest through overwhelming force. When they discovered humanity, they saw easy prey. Young species, limited technology, small territory. The Zarthok attacked without warning. 12 human colonies were destroyed in the first month. 3 billion people died. The Zarthok expected humanity to surrender immediately. Instead, humanity fought back with terrifying determination. They adapted their tactics constantly. They used guerrilla warfare in space, something no one had attempted before. They turned asteroids into weapons. They hacked Zarthok communication systems and turned the enemy's ships against each other. Most impressive was their unity. Every human faction, every nation, every political group put aside their differences and fought as one species. The war lasted 3 years. By the end, the Zarthok had lost 30% of their military fleet. They sued for peace and retreated to their own territory, where they had remained ever since. Princess Velara read report after report. She learned that the Teln Federation had been facing a similar invasion when humanity intervened with tactical advice. The Renth had been suffering from a pandemic when human doctors arrived with new medical techniques. The Morvian alliance had nearly collapsed during a civil war until human mediators helped broker peace. In 15 years, humanity had quietly become one of the most respected species in the galaxy. Not through military might alone, but through competence, reliability, and a willingness to help others. And Princess Velara had called them primitive. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her royal crown suddenly felt heavy and foolish. She was 19 years old and thought she knew everything. She had 3,000 years of history behind her and believed that made her superior. But she had never fought a real battle. She had never saved a life. She had never done anything except be born into royalty. Jake Morrison had been a soldier, a diplomat, and a leader. He had earned his position through skill and sacrifice. And she had insulted him because she could not see past her own arrogance. A message alert chimed. Princess Velara opened it and felt her blood run cold. Her father, the Emperor, had collapsed. Stress had triggered a serious medical condition. The doctors were doing everything they could, but he was unconscious and might remain that way for months. Until he recovered, she was in charge. She, who had just destroyed her empire's relationship with the most valuable ally they could have had. Thexneil arrived within minutes. Your Highness, I heard about your father. I am so sorry. Counselor, she said, her voice shaking, I need to speak with Ambassador Morrison. I have tried, Your Highness. He does not respond to our messages. Then I will go to Earth myself. Thexneil looked shocked. Your Highness, that is... The royal family has never traveled to petition another species. It would be seen as a sign of weakness. Good, the princess said bitterly, because we are weak. I made us weak, and now I need to fix it. There is no guarantee he will even see you. I know, but I have to try. That same day, across the galaxy, Jake Morrison sat in his office on Earth. He was reviewing a new alliance proposal with the Vrex Collective when Amy Rodriguez entered. Sir, you are not going to believe this. Princess Velara has requested permission to land on Earth. She wants to meet with you personally. Jake leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a long moment. How many ships is she bringing? Just one small transport. No military escort, no royal entourage, just her and High Counselor Thexneil. Jake raised an eyebrow. That was surprising. A Calvoxian royal traveling without a full honor guard was almost unheard of. When does she want to meet? As soon as possible, she says. Jake thought about it. He thought about the insult. He thought about the 3 months of silence. He thought about the message that silence had sent. Tell her, he said slowly, that I am very busy. I might be able to see her in 3 days. Amy smiled slightly. Making her wait? She made us travel 3 weeks for her convenience, Jake replied. 3 days seems fair. Amy left to send the message. Jake turned to look out his window at the earth below. The princess was learning. Good. But learning was not the same as changing. He would see if she had truly understood her mistake or if this was just another royal playing games. Either way, he would not make it easy for her. Princess Velara had never waited for anyone in her life. She was royalty. People waited for her. But now she sat in a modest hotel room on Earth, staring at the walls, counting the hours until Jake Morrison would see her. The hotel was clean and comfortable, but nothing special. No grand palace, no servants rushing to fulfill her every wish. Just a simple room with a window overlooking a human city. She watched the people below going about their lives, millions of them working, laughing, living. They did not care that she was here. They did not know who she was. To them, she was nobody. It was a strange feeling. High Counselor Thexanil sat across from her, reading reports on a data pad. His expression grew darker with each document. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I have bad news. The Zarthok attacked 3 of our border colonies last night." Velara's 3 eyes went wide. "What? How many casualties?" "Thousands. The colonies were lightly defended. Our military response has been inadequate." "What do you mean, inadequate?" Thexanil set down the pad. "Our fleet commanders tried using tactics from the old war manuals. The Zarthok have adapted since then. They destroyed 5 of our warships before we could retreat. Admiral Kexathan is requesting reinforcements, but we do not have enough forces in that sector." Velara felt sick. People were dying because of military failures. Military failures that might have been prevented if they had human tactical advisors, if she had not insulted Jake Morrison, if she had been wiser. "Have our allies responded?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Slowly. "They are sending minimal support. I believe they are waiting to see if humanity will intervene." "But humanity has no treaty with us. Why would they intervene?" Thexanil looked at her with sad, ancient eyes. "That is precisely the point, Your Highness. Without human support, our allies believe we are vulnerable. They do not want to commit their forces to a losing situation." Velara stood and paced the room. "This is insane. One insult, one stupid, childish insult, and our entire empire is suffering for it." "Not the insult itself," Thexanil corrected gently. "But what the insult revealed. It showed the galaxy that Calvoxian leadership lacks wisdom. It showed that we judge others based on age and appearance rather than capability. It showed that we are not ready to work with newer species as equals." "But I am ready now," Velara said desperately. "I understand. I have learned." "Have you? Or do you simply want their help because you need it?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Velara stopped pacing. Was she sorry for the insult, or just sorry for the consequences? Did she respect humanity, or did she just want to use them? Before she could answer, her communication device chimed. It was a message from home. The Emperor's condition had worsened. He had fallen into a deep coma. The doctors could not predict when or if he would wake. She was now officially the ruler of the Calvoxian Empire. All decisions rested on her shoulders, including the decision of how to save her people from the Zarthok. The next morning, a human official arrived to escort her to the meeting with Jake Morrison. They traveled through the city in a simple vehicle. No parade, no fanfare, just a quiet drive through streets filled with ordinary people. They arrived at the Human Council chambers in Geneva. It was an impressive building, but not overwhelming. Not designed to intimidate. Just solid and functional. Very human. Jake Morrison's office was on the 15th floor. The official led them to a waiting room. "Ambassador Morrison will see you shortly," the official said, then left. Shortly turned into an hour, then 2 hours. Velara fought the urge to complain. She knew what Jake was doing. He was making her feel what he had felt. The disrespect, the dismissal, the sense of being unimportant. She deserved it. Finally, after 3 hours, the door opened. Amy Rodriguez stood there, her expression neutral. "The ambassador will see you now." Velara and Thexenil entered the office. It was not large or fancy. A desk, some chairs, walls covered with maps and documents. Jake Morrison sat behind the desk, reading something on a screen. He did not look up when they entered. They stood there in silence for almost a minute before he finally acknowledged them. "Princess Velara," he said, his voice flat. "Please sit." They sat. Jake put down his screen and looked at her directly. His face showed nothing. No anger, no welcome, nothing. "Why are you here?" he asked simply. Velara had practiced a speech. She had written notes. She had prepared explanations and justifications. But sitting here, looking at this human who she had insulted so carelessly, all of those words felt empty. "I was wrong," she said. "What I said to you was wrong. How I treated you was wrong. I judged your entire species based on ignorance and arrogance. I apologize." Jake said nothing. He just waited. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Velara continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I know I do not deserve it, but I am asking for a chance. My people are dying, the Zarthok are attacking, and we are not prepared. I know you have no reason to help us. I know we treated you with disrespect. But I am begging you, not as royalty, but as one leader to another, please help my people." The silence stretched. Jake's expression did not change. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "You are right. You do not deserve forgiveness. But more importantly, you are asking the wrong question." Velara blinked. "What do you mean?" "You are asking me to save your people from consequences that you created. You insulted humanity, and we withdrew our cooperation. Now you face problems, and you want us to fix them. That is not how partnerships work." "Then what do you want?" Velara asked, tears forming in her eyes. "I will give you anything." "I do not want anything," Jake said. "That is the problem. You think this is a transaction. You think you can pay your way out of disrespect. But respect is not bought. It is earned." Thexenil spoke for the first time. "Ambassador Morrison, what would it take for us to earn that respect?" Jake leaned back in his chair. "Time. Trust. Consistent behavior over years, not days. Your princess apologized, but words are easy. Actions are what matter. How do I know this is not just desperation? How do I know that once your crisis is over, you will not go back to viewing humanity as inferior?" "You do not know," Velara admitted. "I cannot prove my sincerity with words. But please, give me the chance to prove it with actions. Let me work alongside your people. Let me learn from you, not as a royal observing primitives, but as a student learning from teachers." Jake studied her face for a long moment. Then he tapped his desk, bringing up a holographic display. It showed the Zarthok attack zones. "The Zarthok are not just attacking you," he said. "They are testing the entire region. If they succeed against the Calvoxians, they will move on to weaker species. This affects more than just your empire." "So you will help?" Velara asked hopefully. "I will consider limited cooperation," Jake corrected. "Not for you. Not even for your people, but for the innocent species who will suffer if the Zarthok grow bolder. However, there are conditions. Anything. First, any human forces that assist will operate under human command. You do not get to order us around. Second, Calvoxian forces will follow human tactical guidance without question. Third, you personally will serve alongside human troops on the front lines. You will not sit safely in a palace while others fight your war. And fourth, this cooperation is temporary. After the Zarthok threat is contained, we will reevaluate our relationship based on how you and your people behave." The conditions were harsh. humiliating even. But Velara did not hesitate. "I accept." Jake nodded slowly. "Then we have an agreement. Limited cooperation. Nothing more." As Velara stood to leave, Jake spoke one more time. "Princess, you made a mistake. A serious one. But everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do next. I hope you prove me wrong about you." For the first time since entering the office, Velara saw something in his eyes. Not warmth exactly, but perhaps a small possibility of it. A chance. She would not waste it. The human military transport ship was nothing like the luxury vessels Princess Velara was used to. The walls were gray metal, the bunks were narrow, and the food was basic rations designed for efficiency, not taste. 50 human soldiers shared the space with her, along with High Counselor Thexnil, who insisted on staying by her side. Velara wore simple combat armor, the same type issued to every soldier. Her crown remained back on Earth, locked in a storage facility. Here, she was not royalty, she was just another fighter preparing for battle. The human soldiers treated her with polite distance. They did not mock her, but they did not respect her either. Respect had to be earned, and she had not earned anything yet. Commander Danny Foster ran the human tactical operation. He was a serious man with gray hair and scars across his face from previous battles. He had fought in the Zarthok War and survived some of the worst combat humanity had ever seen. He gathered everyone for a briefing. The holographic display showed the combat zone, a star system with 3 Calvoxian colonies under siege. "The Zarthok control the outer planets," Danny explained. "They are using them as bases to launch raids on the inner colonies. Our objective is to take back those bases and force them to retreat. This will not be easy. The Zarthok are experienced warriors and they do not surrender." One of the human soldiers raised her hand. "Sir, what about the Calvoxian fleet? Will they support us?" Danny glanced at Velara. "Admiral Kexthan has positioned his ships in defensive formations around the colonies. They will provide cover, but the main assault will be led by human forces. The Calvoxians are learning new tactics." It was a diplomatic way of saying the Calvoxian military was outdated. Velara felt shame burn through her. Her empire had grown comfortable over centuries of peace. They had forgotten how to truly fight. The next few weeks were the hardest of Velara's life. The human soldiers woke at dawn and trained constantly. They drilled combat maneuvers, practiced equipment maintenance, and studied enemy tactics. Velara participated in everything, despite her exhaustion. Her royal tutors had taught her art, history, and diplomatic protocol. They had never taught her how to carry a heavy pack for 12 hours. They had never taught her how to strip and reassemble a weapon in under 2 minutes. They had never taught her what fear truly felt like. The human soldiers began to notice her effort. She never complained. She never asked for special treatment. When she failed at something, she tried again until she succeeded. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the distance between them began to shrink. One evening, a young human soldier named Pete sat down next to her in the mess hall. He was maybe 20 years old, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "You are doing good, Princess," he said casually. "Please just call me Velara. I am not acting as royalty here." Pete nodded. "Okay, Velara. Can I ask you something? Why are you really here? You could have sent generals or diplomats. Why come yourself?" Velara thought about the question. "Because I caused this problem. I was arrogant and foolish, and my people are suffering for my mistakes. I cannot fix that by sitting in a palace and giving orders. I have to be here. I have to understand what war truly means." Pete smiled. "That is a good answer. Most royals I have heard about would never admit they were wrong. Most royals never had to face the consequences of their words," Velara replied quietly. The battle began 3 days later. Human and Calvoxian forces moved together toward the first Zarthok base. The enemy detected them immediately and launched a counterattack. Velara had studied battles in history books. She had watched simulations and tactical displays. Nothing prepared her for the reality, the sounds of weapons fire, the acrid smell of burned metal, the screams of wounded soldiers, the absolute chaos of combat. Commander Danny's voice cut through the confusion on the communication channel. "All units, maintain formation, follow the plan. Do not let them scatter you." The human forces moved with practiced precision. They used cover effectively, coordinated their fire, and adapted when the Zarthok changed tactics. The Calvoxian forces, following human guidance, managed to hold their positions despite being less experienced. Velara fought alongside Pete and his squad. Her hands shook and her heart pounded, but she kept moving. When Pete was pinned down by enemy fire, she provided covering fire so he could retreat. When another soldier was wounded, she helped drag him to safety. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, the Zarthok base was destroyed, but the cost was heavy. 15 humans died. 27 Calvoxians died. Dozens more were wounded. Velara sat in the medical bay afterward, covered in dirt and blood that was not her own. She had never seen death before. Not real death. Not people who had been alive and talking one moment, then gone the next. Jake Morrison arrived on a command ship the next day to review the operation. He walked through the recovered base with Commander Danny, examining the damage and discussing tactics. When he saw Velara sitting alone, he approached. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice showing a hint of concern. "No. Physically, I am fine." She looked up at him with haunted eyes. "But I cannot stop thinking about the people who died, humans and Calvoxians both. They died because of a war that I helped cause." Jake sat down beside her. "They died fighting the Zarthok. That is not your fault. If I had not insulted you, if we had been working together these past months, maybe we would have been better prepared. Maybe fewer would have died." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But you cannot change the past. You can only control what you do next." Velara wiped her eyes. "Pete, the young soldier, he saved my life today. He pushed me out of the way when a blast was coming toward me. He could have died protecting someone who had insulted his entire species." "That is what soldiers do," Jake said. "They protect others, even when it is hard, even when it is not fair. That is the difference between talking about honor and actually living it." Over the next 2 months, the combined human and Calvoxian forces pushed the Zarthok back system by system. The battles were brutal, but they were winning. The Zarthok, facing determined resistance and superior tactics, began to retreat. Velara fought in 7 more battles. She learned how to think under pressure, how to trust the people around her, and how to lead by example rather than by royal decree. The human soldiers stopped calling her princess and started calling her Ve. It was a nickname, casual and friendly. She treasured it more than any royal title. Admiral Kexthan visited the front lines and was shocked by what he saw. Princess Velara, covered in dust and exhaustion, planning the next operation alongside human commanders. Treating them as equals, listening to their advice without arrogance. "Your Highness," he said privately, "you have changed." "I hope so," Velara replied. "I was a child pretending to be wise. Now I am just trying to learn." The final battle came 4 months after the campaign began. The Zarthok made one last attempt to break through the defensive line. It was their largest assault, involving hundreds of ships and thousands of soldiers. Commander Danny put Velara in charge of a Calvoxian unit. "Show me what you have learned," he said simply. The battle was chaos, but Velara kept her unit together. She used human tactics, adapted them to Calvoxian strengths, and made decisions quickly without second-guessing herself. Her forces held their position and even pushed forward, capturing a key enemy installation. When the battle ended, the Zarthok finally retreated completely. They had lost too many resources and faced an enemy that would not break. The war was over. 2 weeks later, a formal ceremony was held on Earth. Leaders from across the galaxy attended. Admiral Kexthon presented the Human Council with the Star of Calvox, the highest honor his empire could give. Jake Morrison accepted it on behalf of humanity. Then it was time for the treaty signing. Velara, now officially the Empress since her father had passed away during the conflict, sat at the table beside Jake Morrison. The treaty established formal alliance between humanity and the Calvoxian Empire, with provisions for mutual defense, cultural exchange, and shared military training. Before signing, Velara spoke to the assembled dignitaries. 4 months ago, I stood before Ambassador Morrison and insulted him. I insulted all of humanity. I was arrogant, ignorant, and foolish. I believed that age and history made me superior. I was wrong. She looked directly at Jake. Ambassador Morrison could have let my empire fall. He had every right to refuse my requests for help. But he chose to look beyond my failure and see the innocent people who would suffer. He chose mercy. He chose to give me a chance to prove I could be better. She held up the signing pen. This treaty is not just an alliance between nations. It is a promise that the Calvoxian Empire will never again judge others based on appearances or assumptions, a promise that we will treat all species with the respect they deserve, and a personal promise from me that I will spend my life trying to earn the forgiveness I do not deserve. She signed the treaty. Jake signed after her. Then, for the first time since their first meeting, he smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and welcoming. He extended his hand. Velara shook it, and the room erupted in applause. Later, as the ceremony ended and people began to leave, Jake and Velara stood together looking out a window at the stars. "You did well," Jake said. "Not just in the battles, but in changing yourself. That is harder than any combat." "I had a good teacher," Velara replied. "You showed me that silence can be more powerful than anger, that dignity matters more than pride, that respect is earned through actions, not demanded through status." Jake nodded. "Your people are lucky to have you as Empress now. You understand things that many leaders never learn. I learned because you gave me the chance. Most people would have simply refused and moved on." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Jake said, "as long as they are willing to truly change." They stood in comfortable silence, two leaders from different worlds, bound now by mutual respect and hard-won trust. The galaxy watched and understood. Humanity had shown not just their strength in battle, but their wisdom in peace. And the young Empress had shown that pride could be overcome, that mistakes could be corrected, and that real leadership meant having the courage to change.